Hi, everybody, and welcome to Therefore a Geek. I'm Andrew,
And I'm Tracy.
and today we are talking The Killing Joke. So, Tracy and I will be discussing Killing Joke, the comic, and Dude, in a little private session of his own, will be discussing Killing Joke, the animated film.
Which is terrifying.
Dude on his own, or Killing Joke, the animated film?
Dude on his own, although the other thing is terrifying all by itself.
Yeah, no, I think you're right to be more afraid of Dude and solo time.
He has
Well,
no censor.
a little bit of me time for Dude.
Oh Lord. That's not a road we want to go down at all. So yeah,
So,
Alan Moore.
so we're talking about The Killing Joke, which is Alan Moore and Brian Boland. And it was in 19 so originally published in 1988. It's been reprinted several times. Tracy and I both read the deluxe edition, which came out several years ago. So, The Killing Joke, rough synopsis here from the back cover. This is one bad day. According to the grinning engine of madness and mayhem known as the Joker, that's all that separates the sane from the psychotic. Freed once again from the confines of Arkham Asylum, he's out to prove his deranged point. And he's going to use Gotham City's top cop, Commissioner Jim Gordon, and his brilliant and beautiful daughter, Barbara, to do it. Now, Batman must race to stop his arch-nemesis before his reign of terror claims two of the Dark Knight's closest friends. Can he finally put an end to the cycle of bloodlust and lunacy that links these two iconic foes before it leads to its fatal conclusion? And as the horrifying origin of the Clown Prince of Crime is finally revealed, will the thin line that separates Batman's nobility and the Joker's insanity snap once and for all? And yeah, I mean that's a pretty apt description of the book. So it is originally intended as an out of continuity single Batman story. It's only 47 pages long. There's not a whole lot to it, really.
I was actually surprised at how quickly it flew by.
Oh
I'm
no, it reads very lightly. It's quite nice, I think.
This is a very infamous book, and so going into it and knowing Alan Moore's reputation as a writer, I kind of expected something that was even at first glimpse very heavy, and it really isn't. The wordplay is smooth, the writing of course is brilliant, and there are moments that can kind of flash by you a little too quickly. And it's not until you're finished and you wrap it up and you kind of think back a little bit before you realize the impact this should have had.
Well, for 47 pages, the book has a fairly considerable amount of depth, and it's interesting. For the deluxe edition, the foreword is written by Tim Sale, who himself has written several very well-known Batman stories, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, a couple of those. So Tim kind of points out, this is, especially in the 80s, this is one of the books that really changed the face of comics. It was Killing Joke. There was Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's Batman Year One, and then Alan Moore's Watchmen. Not oddly enough, that's what it is. So, you've got Alan Moore, and really the mix of Alan Moore and Frank Miller, kind of changing the face of comic. And this is one of those books that's just it's stuck around.
Yeah, and it's often referenced in other books as well. I mean, it's a cornerstone of DC lore and canon now, even though it wasn't intended to be canon at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. I mean, probably the biggest thing that comes out of this, obviously, is the crippling of Barbara Gordon, which even, knowing that it's happening, knowing it's coming, it's still a pretty horrific read.
Absolutely.
It's an entire page that has absolutely no words on it. And just the facial expressions on Barbara are just, I mean, I don't mean to make a pun on this one, but gut-wrenching.
Well, and it sort of caught me off guard. Even, again, like you said, although I have not read this before, I knew what the story was. I mean, you can't really know anything about comics for very long without getting around to finding out what the plot is. And so as soon as I was reading the bits about the doorbell ringing and it was sort of the panels were leading up to her walking towards the door and saying she expected her friend there. Even like just the moment that she opens it, the shock on her face sort of resonated with me as well. I could feel that moment when I don't even think that. So Commissioner knew that Joker had gotten out at this point,
Yeah.
but neither of them ever expected him to show up at their door.
No, not at all. Well, it's one of the just having read the recent issue of Batgirl. It may have been the Rebirth issue.
Mm-hmm.
This specific page comes up where she talks about, what she remembers most from this incident. It's not the gun, it's not the Joker, it's that stupid Hawaiian shirt. But it's the idea, kind of the those people who have been through, very severe traumas, the things that stick out to them, the things that trigger, the post-traumatic stress are not the obvious things.
Yeah, it's often the details.
Yeah, and sometimes the most bizarre details. There was an episode of West Wing that dealt with that, where one of the characters who had been shot kept having basically these flashbacks to it, because working in the White House, they were having different musicians playing throughout Christmas, and all the different horns and whatnot kept reminding him of the sirens, and that kept triggering. But it's that kind of idea, and really it's that kind of attention to detail and depth that lends such strength to the book and to Alan Moore's writing in general.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's one of those. This is not Watchmen, like in terms of, this is not the magnum opus that is Watchmen. Watchmen. It's 12. Really, Watchmen's only 12 issues of comics. But more than that, Watchmen is a very, I don't want to say long form tale, but I mean, you don't really piece it together until the end.
Yes, exactly. And this again,
and you've got to go through 12 issues to get to the end. I mean, it's 47 pages, so it's basically a very large issue. It's a double-sized issue, basically.
Yeah.
And that's it. It is a single story. It is start and done.
Beautifully bookended. I love the quality of the writing in this. I mean, everything, it's yin and yang. Everything sort of flows in and flows out. Again, different events sort of bookend the beginning and the end of it. It's just absolutely a beautiful piece. But as you said, it just flows so quickly, and then it's just done.
Well, as you say, you're talking about the flow and the book ending. Yeah, I have to say a lot of that goes to Brian Boland's art. There's a couple of panels, especially. So in this, we get the origin of the Joker, or a possible origin of the Joker, and we'll discuss that in a minute. And we get periodic flashbacks to that, and there's a couple of things with the flashbacks that kind of stuck out to me. One is the color, that the entire thing is very muted.
Yes.
And I should point out that we are, in fact, reading the deluxe edition, which has been recolored from the original. And the coloring is more of what Brian Boland wanted in the coloring. He and the colorist originally didn't agree. And I think someone was coloring his work kind of after the fact, so he was not happy with the final product in terms of the colors. But the colors for the flashback scenes are very muted and really in kind of to gray tones, with individual items done in color. We've all kind of seen that look in Photoshop, but I think it's done with to very good effect in this. Especially, you have it goes in shades of red. If you look as the background story progresses, it progresses into darker and darker and darker reds.
I did not notice that, but I'll have to go back and look. That's very interesting.
Yeah, the tentacles in the pot are kind of a pinkish hue, and then the crawfish they're eating at the restaurant are kind of a light red. Obviously, the Red Hood is very much a just kind of a standard red, And then during the heist itself, there's the hood, but then there's also the blood when the various other gangsters get killed, and that's obviously a very dark red.
Yeah.
There's that. There's also in several of those the scene just preceding, or the panel just preceding it, mirrors the first panel of the flashback. There's a great one that I loved, which was the Joker it's raining. The Joker's standing there. He's looking down into a puddle. First off, the art and for the reflection is just fantastic. And then the next panel, and it's a page flip, which makes it even better. That kind of reveal is just good comic art.
Yes.
The structuring of the page and the panel right there. But you get the page turn, and then it's basically a similar mirrored image from the night of the heist, the bad night for the Joker.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hell of a bad night.
It really is.
You know, he basically gets laughed off stage. So the night before, he gets laughed off stage as a comedian. Basically admits to his wife that he's a failure. They've got a kid on the way.
Jeannie is her name.
Yeah, Jeannie, and he doesn't know what to do. So he decides basically to join up with these kind of low life criminals who
they basically need a fall guy.
Yeah,
is what they're looking for, and that's pretty clear. I mean, I don't think that anyone. Well, I mean, obviously he's young and he's just desperate, but at the same time, it's pretty clear.
He's also somewhat naive.
Mm-hmm.
He's never done anything like this before. So he joins in, and as at the kind of conclusion of their conversation, a couple of cops find him to tell him that while he's been out, his wife has died in an accident. Basically, she was testing out the electric bottle heater for their baby, and she gets electrocuted basically.
Mm-hmm.
So she dies. He tries to back out of the crime, and basically the guys threaten him into still going through with it. The crime goes south, and they try and blame him. They try and pin it all on him because he's wearing the red hood. So they're trying to pin it like he's the leader.
Mm-hmm.
The other two criminals get shot, and in order for him to escape, he jumps into the river, which happens to be full of chemicals.
Dumping ground.
Yeah, which turn him into the Joker. And it's actually the reveal of him as the Joker for the first time is a very famous image. We'll definitely have to put in the show notes. And it's just it's
eerie.
Yeah, I was gonna say haunting. That's not quite where I'm quite the feeling though. But yeah, I think eerie's a good one, where you know everything that comes next.
Yes, exactly. The other bookending thing that I really appreciated, going back a little more to the writing, was that Batman starts the issue by going in to talk to the Joker about how he understands that the Joker thinks that their whole dance, their tango, if you will, is going to end with one of them killing the other or both of them killing each other. And he wants to find some common ground, not necessarily forgive the Joker for what he's done, not necessarily, free him or anything like that, but find common ground in which they both have sort of a mutual humanity. And it turns out, of course, that the Joker has escaped and there's someone else in his place in the cell. But this is clearly something that is bothering Batman, because at the end of the issue, when he bumps into the real Joker, even given everything that has happened with Barbara and Commissioner Gordon, Batman still wants to find this commonality between the two.
Well, so let's be honest, though. There is a commonality, and the commonality is the one bad day. Right? Joker's had his bad day. So did Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
Batman, and the Joker even supposes he supposes that that something happened.
Right.
I don't think he doesn't fully understand what happened. I tend to subscribe to the idea that the Joker actually knows who Batman is, and he doesn't care. And I can kind of see evidence in this book both ways, and I don't think Alan Moore had
Mm-hmm.
one stance or another. At least it didn't intend for one stance or another. But I think the Joker, knowing who Batman is, almost works better to this.
Yeah.
Where he's had the bad day. The Joker thinks that, Batman.
The Joker just wants Batman to admit that he himself is also insane.
Right.
He's like, you had a bad day. I had a bad day. It made me insane. I need you to admit to the fact that you are also insane, even though you're pretending sanity.
Well, and he's kind of, in a way, he's kind of forcing another bad day onto Batman.
Absolutely.
Right. So he's trying to prove a point, and he's trying to use Gordon to do it. And basically, the idea is he's trying to break Gordon. So he's trying to put Gordon into that bad day. So he shoots Barbara in front of Gordon. He then, kidnaps him, shows him pictures of Barbara, injured and stripped naked. He's, stripped naked and humiliated. Joker does everything he can think of and everything in his power to just destroy Gordon's spirit. And although Gordon is obviously at times catatonic and with distraught in this, with despair, he doesn't break. And in fact, Batman comes much closer to breaking than Gordon does.
Yep, I would agree.
And Gordon is the one who tells him, no, we have to do this by the book. Bring him in. We have
prove
to
to him that this way works.
Right. And basically prove to him he's wrong.
Yep.
I mean that's kind of the big takeaway I get from that is that, Gordon essentially proves to the Joker that he's not right. Also, to an extent, to Batman.
Which is vital. I mean, it's very important to Batman's continued presence in Gotham.
Well, aside from that, I think if Gordon had collapsed, if Gordon had given in to the bad day, I think it would have made Batman question himself. If Gordon, who is invariably one of the rocks of Batman's universe, one of the pillars that really holds Batman together, if Gordon falls, then obviously Batman feels that he's. I think Batman feels he's going to fall as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Batman knows he's the fastest. He's one of the smartest. All of these great things. At the same time, there is a certain level of self-doubt built into Batman. He has to be better. He has to be stronger, faster. He can't let this happen again. That kind of thing. He's driven by that feeling of being powerless as a kid. I couldn't help them. I need to help people now. I have to be better. I have to be stronger, faster, smarter, everything like that. So just because Batman is all those things doesn't mean he's not constantly questioning who he is and where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so coming back to what we talked about a minute ago is the origin of the Joker.
So I'm not a huge DC fan. Is this the first time that anyone has actually written an actual origin story for the Joker? Not one that was sort of theorized or made up by another character, but where we actually see it as a potentially real story?
I don't know, honestly. I do read some Batman, and obviously, some DC, and Batman is among the most that I read. Batman and Green Lantern are the two titles I read the most.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not certain. And to be honest, I have a little bit of an issue with the idea of an origin story for Joker. In that, I just don't think. I think Joker works better without one, or without a clear origin.
Yeah.
And I think Dark Knight, the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight, does that perfectly. every time the
Brilliant,
Joker
yes.
introduces himself, he asks, "You want to know how I get these scars?" And it's always a different story. And there's actually a line in here. I'll go ahead and read it as soon as I find it. That Joker is talking about what happened, like what happened to him.
When he's explaining the story we've already been seeing throughout the previous part of the issue.
Yeah. I'm trying to find because it's a really good line. Oh, here it is. Like something like that happened to me. I'm not exactly sure what it was. Sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. If I'm gonna have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So
I saw
even
that
in
too.
giving a clear and concise story, like backstory for the Joker himself says, "Well, I don't really remember it. I'll tell it one way, I'll tell it another." So,
And to him, it's all equally true.
right, and it also, I think, it goes to show how deeply shattered his mind is,
Yes.
which again contrasts Batman, who is perfectly structured. This
And
is
in a way, has to be.
this is one of those stories I think makes that demonstrates how well the Joker and Batman play off one another. Again, I also think Nolan's Dark Knight does the same thing. It accomplishes a very similar goal. Dude's not a huge fan of the Joker as the villain. He's much bigger fan of the Riddler, who I think is very good. But in terms of just kind of the yin and yang, the definition of a dramatic foil, I think you got to look very long and hard to find ones that fit as well as Joker and Batman.
Yeah, I would agree.
As with, unfortunately, with most things lately, this book is not without its share of controversy. There's kind of two that come to mind, kind of related. One, we'll touch on the second one just briefly, because we've talked about it at length in several podcasts. But the first one is what is referred to as women in refrigerators. So
Yes.
that is a term coined by Gail Simone, and it had to do with basically came back from late 90s, 1999 actually. And it was from an internet discussion forum, and it kind of, I actually believe it became its own website. And the idea is that, and this has happened, I have to say, there is some, I would say, significant credence to this complaint, and that there are a lot of female characters who either are rather horribly maimed or brutalized, straight up murdered, depowered, or in some way made insignificant in order to be the motivating factor for a male hero, the story for a male hero. And the term "women in refrigerators" itself comes from an issue of Green Lantern where Kyle Rayner's girlfriend is murdered and stuffed into a refrigerator as basically a tragic
Motivator.
motivation for Green Lantern.
Yep.
This is one of the books that is most commonly pointed to for the women in refrigerators argument. And to an extent, I will concede that there is a significant element of that. My issue with that is I think that is putting a very narrow set of blinders on and not taking the work as a whole. I think
Can you flesh that out a little?
So I think there's a lot more to this work than just that. Yes, it is a motivation for Batman, for Jim Gordon. For one, again, Alan Moore had no intention for this to be continuity.
Yes. That's a huge caveat to this discussion.
Well, it's a caveat, and again, I'll admit, that doesn't make it better, right? Just because it's not canon doesn't mean that, hey, Alan Moore wasn't using Barbara Gordon as a motivation for Batman.
Yeah.
But I think, in general, I think that this is one of those cases you have to go to extremes. For one, to find to be able to use this story, right? It has to be. It can't just be I had a bad day at work. Right. This has to be as tragic as they can make it.
Yeah, for the story to do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
And at the time, there are a few people who are closer than Barbara Gordon, who is Batgirl, and Jim Gordon. So I think that's part of it. The other part is she's not the only person who is treated
Brutalized.
in that fashion.
Yeah.
Right? Jim Gordon, although not physically maimed, is treated in a similar fashion.
He's stripped completely naked. They goad him with cattle prods to get onto this ride to see his daughter compromised, humiliated, damaged, almost, as far as he's concerned, irreparably. I also have to point out that the women in refrigerators argument usually applies to a romantic interest, and Barbara isn't. Well, see, this is a hard one to say, but for the most part,
yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily agree with the fact that it's always romantic interest. I think Aunt May is an example.
oh yeah, that's true.
You know, Aunt May is constantly in fucking peril.
That's true.
As a motivation for Spider-Man, which drives me
But
nuts because
I would say that that Barbara wouldn't be. Well, I guess she's, because of her relationship with Batman, I guess she is a little bit of a motivator for him. But reading the story at face value, it seems as though Barbara's paralysis and humiliation was the impetus to break Gordon, and the breaking of Gordon was the impetus for Batman to step in. I didn't feel as though Batman had seen the pictures of Barbara or really was impacted by what happened to her just yet. And I'm sure that was coming, but it would have fallen off the edge of the end of the story.
So I think you're forgetting the scene in the hospital where Batman goes to the hospital. So I don't think it's a romantic interest. I think it is, and this is one of those. It could be, couldn't be in terms of Joker knowing who Batman is, because either he knew, if he knows who Batman is, then he's struck at two people who are exceptionally close. Like, not only is he going for Gordon, he's also going for someone that Batman has been training and has been mentoring.
Yeah.
So there's that, or he just it was a random happenstance for the Joker.
Happy little accident, as Bob Ross likes to say.
I'm not even sure Bob Ross could say that one with a straight face.
I went real dark.
A happy
Sorry about
little.
that, guys.
Oh fuck me! Nope. I screwed. I screwed up. Fuck it. Yeah. So. Yeah. Again, I mean, there is certainly some credence to the argument. I just don't know that. I don't know that I would call it the poster child for women in refrigerators. The second controversy is one, like I said, we've talked about kind of at length, and that is the Batgirl cover that plays homage to the Killing Joke.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you know, the censorship argument aside, I don't personally know that the cover was in as bad a taste as a lot of people think it was. You know, there just aren't that there aren't that many stories that involve Batgirl and the Joker. So if you have a month that has Joker themed covers, regardless of the wisdom of that decision, I don't work at DC editorial. I don't know why they choose to or choose not to do that, but whatever. But if they're going to do that, that is the first thing that would pop into nearly any artist's head is Killing Joke, because that's the most visible connection between those two characters.
Yeah.
And, to be honest, I kind of getting off topic a little bit, this was not at all intended to be a canon piece. It obviously was taken as canon and very much changed Barbara Gordon. I think to a large extent changed Barbara Gordon, not for the better, but artists
for the more interesting?
Artists and writers were able to take her and do really cool things with her.
Yeah.
It's one of those ends can't justify the means kind of arguments, and I don't think I would never argue that it does. But I think the end result turned out much better than it could have. Right? This could have been a character that was just relegated to nothingness afterwards. You may see in the background of a panel, or Jim Gordon may talk about his daughter, at some point. But because this was a character that fans and writers and artists loved, they said, kind of, fuck you, Alan Moore. We're going to do something really cool with her. And I also kind of like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of, if you don't see the stories you want being written, write them.
Yes.
So if people didn't like what was happening with Barbara, if you want really cool Barbara Gordon stories, write really cool Barbara Gordon stories.
Yeah. And that's definitely happened.
Absolutely. You can look back. Like I said, Gail Simone is one of the person who coined the phrase "women in refrigerators," and she had a very strong run on Batgirl just recently. Well,
Yes.
a couple of years ago now at this point, but so it is certainly possible to redeem a character who has been in the midst of something like this.
Been put in a fridge.
Yeah, it's funny. There's actually an interesting, not to go into it at this point, but there's kind of an interesting, we'll call it caveat to the women in refrigerators, and that is called men defrosting. Well, so, and again, it's similar to the argument, and they're not necessarily wrong, in that very often men who are put in the same situations regain their powers or are miraculously healed or something. So,
Yeah. No, I see that one too. That's funny. We'd have to do perhaps another conversation that gets into the depth of that one, but yeah, I like what has happened to Barbara since, and even now, even her current run is really cute and sweet, and it's aimed a little bit more at girls as opposed to adults, but I absolutely agree with you in that she's been taken in so many cool directions now that probably were not possible prior to this.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. I really liked Gail Simone's portion of the run on Batgirl in the New 52.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't start out liking the Batgirl of Burnside. And the character and the writing has actually quite grown on me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's that's a really nice... I'm glad I stuck with it, because I was kind of thinking about dropping it when I was like, oh, the book's okay, but it's not really for me. And then I really came to enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like it when I'm surprised like that. That's always really kind of a treat.
Yes.
All right, so folks, that wraps it up for our portion. But don't tune out just yet, because dude, like I mentioned before, is having a little solo time, and he's going to be discussing The Killing Joke, the animated film that was released just last week.